Hi there, it's Sharon and welcome to my studio. Today I have a video showing you how I turned this ideology collage master sheet into a couple of projects for the holidays. So if you remember, this is a master sheet that I made with all of the ephemera that was left over after taking the Simon Says Stamp and Tim Holtz Create Together class. And I have a video on how I made this sheet. It's very easy. I'll link that in the description below. Then I also made another sheet with just some of the ephemera that I had in my stash. So I have a lot of different pieces over the years that I've collected, and I kind of combined those into another sheet. And I've also added one of the techniques from the class and putting some sellotape on this sheet. So you see that here and there. And I have two different sheets. This one is landscape, obviously. This one is portrait. And what I'm going to do is turn those into a couple of different projects today. So let's get started. You can use either sheet. I'll kind of show you like my thinking between using this landscape version versus the portrait version. I might switch between both, but whatever you have is fine. So the first project that I want to share with you is just a simple card. And I know I wanted to use this dome die from Simon Says Stamp. I think just cutting out something like this would be a really nice and simple card, and adding maybe some greenery or even some holly or something like that to it would just make it a simple, easy card to give and send. So mine will fit on the entire platform here, and I'm just going to set it up. So we'll start with this one. I'll go ahead and cut this out. I will tell you that since I did use the mixed media Heavystock on the back, this was a little hard to cut. So I did run it through my machine 3 times, which seemed to do the trick. So just wanted to have you keep that in mind. So for this card, I wanted to keep it relatively simple. I have the cutout panel, I have a note card, and I cut this down just a little bit smaller than usual A2 size. So this is 4 by 5.25, and I think it just looks better with this size right here. And I'll put those measurements in the description so you have them. And then I'm just going to add a few little die cuts to this and a little splatter and put it all together. So this would be great if you made several master sheets, you wanted to cut a bunch of these shapes out, just add some die cuts, add some splatter, and it would be a great way to make multiples of this card. So now I'm just going to add some simple die cuts to the card. So these are die cuts called Christmas Foliage. They're from Simon Says Stamp. And I cut them out twice. I'm going to just color them in with a little bit of distressing, so they have them all stuck here to my sticky mat. I'm going to go in and just kind of do the inside, and I'm using 3 different colors of distress ink. I'm using Twisted Citron. I'm also using Rustic Wilderness. And then for the berries, Festive Berries. And for these here, I'm going to try just to not ink up the berries and just keep these pretty light. So just keep the berries white, and we'll just add a little bit of glitter to those at the end too to make the card just a little bit more festive. I'm using this teeny tiny brush. It just helps me avoid the other areas here. And then I'll do the same thing. And then I'm going to go in just to finish up. I'm going to leave these just as they are. I'm just going to go in on these holly leaves and then just add a little bit of the dark color just to give them a little variation. And then for the berries, I'm just going to ink up these tiny berries that are right here with Festive Berries. And then I'll go ahead and take these off and then just wipe off my mat. So now we have all the greenery colored. Like I said, I want to keep this pretty simple, and I want this to be something, if I did want to mass produce, that I could. So I'm also going to add just a little white splatter, and this is the Positively Perfect White Splatter Medium from Simon Says Stamp. And since this particular piece that I cut out has a sentiment on it, I'm going to keep that sentiment as the sentiment from my project. Just move those out of the way for a minute. And I'm just going to add a little bit of this white splatter, and you want to make sure that you stir it up well. And I'm just going to add a little bit to the top of my card. You can do this in a splat box if you like. It's still wet, and this does have collage media on it, so I'm going to be able to just wipe that off real quickly. But I don't really want to get any on the sentiment if possible. So just covering it up with a little bit of splatter. Kind of looks like snow. Put that out of the way. And I'll just give it a quick dry with my heat tool to make sure it's totally dry before we move on to the next step. Okay, now that the splatter medium seems to be dry, I'm just going to adhere this piece to my card with some foam tape. And now I'm just going to add a few of these little bits of greenery. So some things to the bottom, and they're really small, but I'm going to try to cut the tiniest pieces of foam tape to add behind them, because I do like how they look popped up. For this piece, I'm just going to add it on flat and kind of like tuck it underneath. Just add another one of these with foam tape on the top. And then I'll go ahead and add in some of these holly branches as well. I'm going to use my tweezers here just to help me get these to stick right underneath here. I think I'm just going to kind of cover this one up, and we'll add the berries on top. But I'll have one piece going on the top, and then this other little piece just kind of tucking underneath. And then I'll go ahead and just add some of the berries down here in the bottom. Can also do the same thing up here. Just add a few little dots of glue. And it's pretty clean and simple. I'm going to do one more thing here. And that's just using a little bit of crystal stickles, just to give it a little bit more shine. So I'm going to add it to all the berries here. And then I'll do the same thing up on top. But that's the first finished project. So we have our card, we just cut a panel out. This one had a sentiment. If you didn't have like a visible or prominent sentiment in your panel, you could always just add another sentiment on top. But all I've done is just add some leaves, a little snow speckle, and then some glitter to these berries right here. So we'll go ahead and let that dry. But you could take your panel and just cut a whole bunch of arches and make a whole set of Christmas cards this way. For the second quick project, I thought we'd work from this sheet. So this one I thought would be really fun to take the sheet that is landscape, the one that I made out of the original collage material, and use some of these tags. Now these are Dina Wakley Media. These are about 2¼ inches tags, and I figure I will change out these little strings for some more festive ribbon. So I thought we could use these pieces for our background, and then we'll add some things on with the sticker book that we used in the class. If you don't have that, you can use any stickers that you have, but I thought it'd be fun to use up some of those as well. So the first thing that I'm going to do with my tags, I'm not going to use these strings, so I'm just going to cut them out. And it's up to you if you want your tags to be one-sided or double-sided. And you can cut out something for the center for both sides, but for mine, I'm just going to keep them one-sided. I don't think anyone's really going to turn it over and look at it. And these, like I said, are 2 1/4. So I'm going to find a circle die or a circle punch that will fit this without going over the entire tag. So I have these tags now with the string cut out, and I want to find a size circle that I can cut out that will fit inside of this tag. And I have this Sizzix die. It seems to actually be the perfect fit. So that's the one that I'm going to use, but play around with any circle dies that you might have at home. So I'm going to figure out on this sheet where I might want to cut things for the background of my tags. Like this might be cute with the 25. Like I said, if you don't have a die cut machine big enough, you might have to cut up your sheet while you're working, but I'm gonna just start by cutting this one out. And I'm gonna find 3 different circles on here, and I'll have to do one at a time. So now these circles are done being cut. And again, I had to cut these, they're on thick paper. I had to cut them like 3 times through my machine, but they were fine. I just wanted to make sure I got a clean cut. The next thing I'm going to do is just take some black soot archival ink just to ink the edges so they're not like super white on the edges and they just look a little more finished, so you can see how that one looks in comparison. And I'll just go ahead and do that. And I'm using the archival ink just because we have like so much collage medium and stuff. I just didn't want regular distress ink to kind of like sit on top of that. So now that those are inked, we're ready to just adhere them to our tags. And you can use collage medium, you can use glue. I have collage medium right here, so that's what I'll use. I just like to use mine with a brush, so I'm just going to brush onto and just get a little scrap to work on. I have these little sheets under my desk just to keep everything clean. I just cleaned the mat off today, so I just have everything ready. This will be the top of my tag where the hole is, so I kind of want to keep that in mind. I will punch a hole through it once this is dry. I'm just going to go ahead and let that dry. I think while I let the rest of these dry, I'm just going to use these clips. This is kind of what I usually use when I'm drying things. And we'll just keep everything together. Hopefully speed up the process a bit. Do the same thing with the last one. Just paint on the collage medium. Make sure when you're done just to either wrap your brush in a baby wipe or soak it in water if you're going to clean it. Don't plan on using it anymore. And I'll do the same thing. I'm just going to grab a couple more clips for this one. So this one's dry. I'm just going to go ahead and punch the hole through. The hole puncher. These are still drying, but I can go ahead and punch the hole through here while we're waiting. And the same thing here. So I'll just let those dry for a minute, and I'll go ahead and pick out some stickers that I might want to use on these. So I think I'm going to use some of these kind of label stickers, and I'll just pick things that are, you know, a little bit smaller. So like this Be Joyful will be cute to use. Let's see if there's anything else. You can also like just pick out part of a word if you want to. If I just wanted it to be believe, I could go ahead and just cut that out. or good tidings. That might be cute. So I think I'm going to take that one and we'll just cut. Let's see, we'll just cut that down. Just that down to fit, and I'll get rid of this piece here. And then I'll also pick one. I might use this Believe, one that's green. When I use these little stickers on projects, you can always just put some foam dots behind them. But what I like to do is just put a tiny piece of, like a strip of cardstock behind them. I'm going to go ahead and just cut a couple of strips of scrap paper. And then what I like to do is just put the sticker right on to the scrap paper. It just makes it a little bit more sturdy, and then trim any excess off. And that way it's just a little easier when you put the foam dots behind it, and also it doesn't really seem to bend. So that's my little trick for keeping those sturdy on your projects. And now I have some foam squares. I'm just using the thick Simon Says stamp foam squares. It's fine. I'm gonna have mine, it's popped up. I'm gonna have it just like hang right off the tag a little bit. This one I did a little crooked, so I'm gonna make it work. I didn't realize it was crooked when I glued it on, but that's fine. We'll tie it to something fun. And then for this last one, I'll just get these pieces out of the way. Go ahead and adhere the Believe. And they're still a little plain. I don't want to add too much to them, but what I'm thinking is to use some of the Tim Holtz glitter paper and cut out just some little stars. So let's go ahead and add the ribbon while we have it out. And I'm just using some ribbon from my stash. I don't need a ton. These are small tags. If I wanted to put them on something, I could always add some more twine or something else. So now that these tags are done, I just wanted to add just a little sparkle for the holidays. So I have this die. This is the Tim Holtz Falling Stars die. And you can use any little star dies you have, or if you have some star stickers or star-shaped gems hanging around. And I also have this piece of glitter paper. So what I thought would be fun to do is just take this, and it will cut all these stars out at once. So now we have this paper with a bunch of tiny stars that we can use, and I'm just going to punch a bunch of these out. And then I'm going to adhere just a few to each tag. So it's just going to give a little bit of sparkle and shine. This die, if you have it in your stash, is great because you can cut out so many stars at once and use it for a bunch of different projects. So I'll just go ahead and punch a bunch of these out. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple here. And then these are all set. So for this one, we use these big Dina Weekly Media tags cut out with a circle die, just circles to fit inside. Added some of those label stickers, and remember we backed them with a little piece of cardstock just to make them sturdy. And then cut out some stars from metallic cardstock and added some ribbon. So those are all set. A super easy project if you wanted to make multiples as well. But then we'll move on to the next project. So I still have this sheet that I made earlier and I cut the circles out of. And this one will be a good one to cut up. The last thing I think that we'll do is just make a set of kind of mini note cards. and use these for the backing. So I'm going to cut these panels. I think I can cut a few panels out of these. And not even mini note cards. I just think we'll cut some backgrounds out of this. So I'm going to cut this one to 3 3/4 here. And I have just enough to cut it to 3 3/4 by 5. So even with this cut piece, it looks like a pretty good background for a project. And I can definitely get a few more of them out of here. So let's see if I can't get another one about that size here. So 3 3/4. By 5, and I think we can even do one more. Let's see how big this is going to be. This is going to be 3 1/2. So this will be 3 1/2 by 5. And then we can keep these pieces. I'm actually going to just trim these down. So I'm going to make them all 3 1/2 by 4 3/4. We have 3 card panels, and it could be fun just to make a set of 3 cards. I will save these little strips, and I'll show you why in a few minutes. But I think we can kind of make like a bonus project with those. So I'm going to take these. The first thing that I'm going to do with these is just add some black stitching around the outside. So now that I've stitched all of my panels, I wanted to take some of the other pieces from the class and kind of use those to make cards. I still have a ton of stuff left over from the class. Here is kind of my bin of all the things that I've been working with. So you can see here are the finished projects that I did, but there's lots of these kind of pieces, a lot of these baseboard pieces and sentiments, still have some paper dolls and, you know, some of these different pieces of greenery. So I took some of those out, and I thought that I could just play around and kind of make add some dimensional elements to what we already have here. And these, I think I'm going to add to some craft cards. So something a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go through, take one of these at a time. This is kind of plain here. And I'll think of some of the things that I want to use. I do want to use this big wreath, which I think that might be a good candidate for the big wreath. And how I'm going to adhere to the card is with some foam dots. So this one could be pretty simple. We have our nice background here. I just added a little stitching, which I always think is a nice touch for a handmade card. And then I'm just going to add this big wreath. And this is one of the baseboard pieces. So this is pretty thick already, but I'm going to add some, you can see it's pretty thick there, just some foam dots to the back of it. And then also I have this sentiment here. This might be good for that. It says best Christmas wishes. But I do want to ink the edges of it. So I'm going to use my archival ink and black soot once again. And you can use a lighter ink if you want to use something green or a brown, but I always like to use the black, so that's what I'm going to go with. And then I have that, and I want that to pop off of the wreath, so I'm going to add that on with some more foam. And this will be a little bit thicker of a card. These are cards that I like to put in, like if I'm mailing a package to somebody or giving it to them in person. But we can go ahead and just put that on here like that. And I think that's okay. I'm going to add some splatter to all these, but I'm going to wait to the end. For the next one, I'll keep my ink out. I think I'm going to go with this 25, and I think this is perfect to cover this up, because when I do, you see just all little square patches. So again, I do like to ink everything on the edges, just so I don't have like super white edges on a card like this. I think for this one too, I'll add underneath just some greenery. So I'll pick maybe another one, but I can kind of lay over or go underneath. I think underneath is better there. If that's the right one. There's another one like similar, so let's add that. I'll also ink the edges of that. So same thing here. I'm going to add just some foam dots to adhere it. And I know I could use foam tape for this, but these black foam dots to me are super sticky. I feel like, especially with these coated papers and all the collage medium, it's just really going to stick to my card and not come off. The other thing I'm going to do is before I put this on, just kind of figure out where I want the greenery to go, and I'll adhere that down just with some regular adhesive. Go ahead and flip that up, and it is like hanging off ever so slightly on both sides, and I think that's totally fine. And then I'm going to go ahead and just try to line this up and make it as straight as possible, but just go ahead and add this 25. So now we've used, you know, a couple of pieces of the different ephemera that we have left over. And then I think for the last one, I'll see what else I have here. I kind of like all of these round shapes. And there's different sizes, so maybe it would be fun to kind of like put them together as a little collage and then add just a sentiment strip over it. So I also want to ink these as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and add all of these on with foam dots, just because I like the idea of having them popped up. And they can actually be off of the card as well a little bit, because we are going to put them on a regular A2 size card, and this is a little bit smaller. Okay, so now we have our 3 here. I think I'm going to add over the top just this Making Spirits Bright to bring it all together. And I will add some hardware heads, those little metal things over here from my collection. If you have those, that's fine. If you don't like all this extra space on either side of the sentiment, you can certainly cut that down as well. And the very last thing I'm going to do for this one is just pick out a couple of these smaller size hardware heads. And I'm just going to use the Distress Collage Medium, just a little dot on each side. And just add one of those so it kind of looks like it's holding our little word strip onto the card. And I'm just going to leave that to dry, and then we'll add the splatter. I'll move the other parts out of the way for now, but you can see on these 3 cards, I've covered them up. And what I've covered them up with is just little scraps from my adhesives and my foam tape that I've used. And for these, I'm going to splatter with some foundry wax. So if you haven't done this before, it's super easy. I'll show you how to do it, but you're going to want to use foundry wax. You're going to want an embossing gun to heat it up. And also when you're using this, just make sure that you're not keeping it super close to your embossing gun. You don't want to heat the bottle and then it will make everything, you'll see when we emboss it, but it will dry this out. So what I did on the side of my glass mat, you'll see I just put a little bit of foundry wax. This is just a glass bottle with some rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol in it. And I'm just mixing a little bit of that into the foundry wax that I've put out. And you'll see it's pretty fluid, so I added about 4 or 5 drops. And from above, I'm going to start adding the foundry wax. You'll see how it looks on there. Once we go ahead and emboss it with the heat gun, you're going to see it's going to turn super shiny. And it's going to dry great on top of these coated pieces, so that's why I'm using this. You could also add white splatter if you want, if you like that look better. But for today, I'm just going to go with this statue. And I think that's enough. So I'll move my brush, I'll clean that off. And if you do use that brush, just clean it off with a little alcohol. Let's wipe this out of the way. Move my little pieces out of the way because they have wet splatter on them and I don't want them to get on anything else. And then I'll heat up my heat gun really well before I put it on my project. So that's how those look with the splatter on top. I'm going to just adhere these all to a craft note card and then we'll be done with those. So the first thing I did was mat my sewn panels to a piece of black. This is the distress black cardstock. And then I'm going to mount it to a piece of craft. And I think that's just going to make everything pop. It brings out the black stitching. So I'll go ahead and do that for all 3 cards. So there's the finished set of cards. So we did our panels, we did a little stitching, added some ephemera with dimensional tape, and a little bit of splatter, and that's it. So another really easy multiple to make. For the rest of the papers here, I thought it would be fun just to cut out some tree shapes. This is the World Layered Evergreen from Simon Says Stamp. I thought it would just be fun to make some very simple tree type cards cut right out of the pieces that I have left. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut these up. I think I'm actually just going to cut them. And then for this side of the die, I'm going to do something different. So I'm going to try to not cut into that as much as I can. So these are the trees that I've cut out, and you can see I have this other textured side of the die. So I want to add that in, and I have this textured side. So what I'm going to do with this is cut this half out for each of these trees using this gold color. So this is the Simon Says Stamp metallic gold cardstock, and I'll cut a few of these out. And then I'm going to just adhere this onto each of my trees. So now I have all of my trees assembled. I'm going to add some foam dots to the back. We're just going to make some really simple cards with them. And what I'm going to do is take some of those stars that we cut out before and use those for tree toppers. And for these, I thought it'd be fun just to add them to something a little different than we've been doing. So I'm going to use some Simon Says Stamp cardstock, and this is the lipstick red color. So one last thing I'm doing is just inking the edges of the panels, and I'm using Festive Berries Distress ink. I've cut these panels down to 3 3/4 by 5, and I'll just go ahead and ink them all up. And I'm just inking the edges just to make the panels pop a bit from the card. And then I'm going to adhere them to the same color card base. And these can be very plain. You can definitely, add some more stuff to the card. You can add a sentiment. I'm going to keep mine until later. I might just add something else to them, I'm not sure. But for now, I'm just going to make some real simple tree cards. Then we can go ahead and assemble these cards. So I've already cut some note cards down. For these, I have the tree popped up already. So I think these panels, I'm actually going to pop these up as well. So I'm going to add some foam tape to the panels. So there are the finished tree cards. So super easy, cut that out. I just cut this contrasting gold. Like I said, you could add some splatter. You could put a sentiment on the front. I'm gonna leave them right now. I kind of like them how they are. But let's take a look at what else we made. So we did make the tree cards. Remember, we started off with the dome card and just adding a few die cuts and popping them up. The next thing that we did were these little tags, and we used the little stickers from inside of the sticker book as well and cut the tags. These are the big Dina Wakley tags. And then finally we have our stitch cards. So these are the ones where I cut panels out right out of my sheet, put some of the thicker elements onto the front of the cards and just added a little foundry wax splatter. And I still have bits and pieces of my panels left over, so I can certainly use them on something else. So I hope you had fun creating these projects with me today. I'm glad that we got to make so many projects. I love having these master sheets on hand, and hopefully you'll make some for yourself and try out some of these projects. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you like, hit the subscribe button. And thank you so much for watching today.